Hello, everybody. We're here today to discuss the latest collaboration from the Open Org community, Human at a Distance, an open organization guide to distributed teamwork. I'm Jen Kelchner, Open Org ambassador, and am joined by several of my fellow ambassadors who are directly involved in the contribution, direction, and editing of this book, Laura Hilliger, Ben Cotton, and Allison Matlack. So Human at a Distance explores how open principles and practices can help organizations foster collaboration, increase transparency, enhance accountability, and establish a greater degree of trust while members are geographically separated. So I wanted to sit down with Ben, Laura, and Allison so we could dig into a little bit more about why we chose to do this book at this time in terms of the community, and I'll let them share a little bit about that with you. So Laura, I was wondering if you could kind of get us started and share with everybody about why this book, why now?
Sure. Well, as we all know, we are living in unprecedented times with the global pandemic. And last year, our community realized that actually, this experience that people are having nowadays, where they are being forced to stay at home and socially distance and work remotely, is something that those of us who have been working in open source for a long time actually take for granted. The amount of skills and competencies and sort of mindsets that make this kind of work possible and productive without, having tons of conflicts and without a lot of miscommunication. And last year, the community, we were talking about what can we do to support the mass shift from in-person, in-office working environments to distributed workforces. How can we as a community share our knowledge and our skills in a way that is accessible to people? And we've written several books in the past, and we thought, okay, well, let's write a book. And the project came about really just in response to us and our own reflection that we have something to share in terms of how can we, as it's not just about the technology for us, and we really wanted to share that with the global community. So that's how the project got kicked off. It was really just a response to what was going on in the world.
So this is this question that I know many of us, well, maybe it's not a question so much as it is a thought that happens when all of us are talking to people who are new-ish to remote work, or they're not used to doing it full time.
Mm.
Um, how has it changed for people to feel and to understand, like at one point, for more than 10 years, people have been doing remote work, but what does it look like now? Like, why is it so much more important to understand the human aspect of it than we ever did before?
Well, I mean, for me, I think that the big thing is about good communication and effective communication, and also, being able to work with people at a human level. When we are not in the same room, and when we don't show up with our body language and our ability to interact with each other in a way that is more sort of natural, um, stuff gets lost. Empathy gets lost on Zoom. Like, we see each other here, but we can't connect in the same way that we could in person. Um, and I feel like in the open org community, or in open source communities more generally, for over a decade, we've gotten good at how we can sort of elicit that more human connection in a remote environment. So it's about, yes, everybody can open a Zoom and start having a conversation, but how can you make sure that other people, feel comfortable interrupting, for example, or sharing their thoughts in a way where it's a little bit more difficult to make yourself seen, just because of the technology being, a sort of a barrier between us.
I think there's also an aspect of in the the past year with you know the social distancing restrictions and a lot of the lockdowns around the world is that for me, I've worked remotely for 8 years now, and I would normally get to go to conferences and see my people, or I would make visits to the office, or I would go grab a beer or a coffee with a friend here in town. And for a year, we haven't had that. And so now we're having to, not only have people who are maybe new to remote working, but also find ways to connect to keep that human connection that even us, experienced remote workers used to get elsewhere.
And there's
Yeah,
also
honestly, that's something that, oh,
sorry, Laura.
sorry, Allison, go on.
Well, I was going to say there's also an aspect of you're letting everyone into your home. I mean, we have interruptions of family and pets, which I actually have right now. And, everything that we have in our personal lives as context for how we're showing up at work now. And so, Jen, when you ask about why is the human aspect of it even more important, it's really taking into consideration that everyone has this world of other things that they're concerned about, even more so than usual. And it's important for us all to pay attention to how can we help support each other and make sure that we're having that positive and effective communication and making all those connections as best we can, given the circumstances.
Absolutely. Laura, did you have some more you wanted to share?
Oh, I was just going to respond to Ben. One of the biggest challenges that I've had in the pandemic is because I work remotely since 15 years or something. My life, my professional life is on the computer, and like I'm always here. And I've had a big struggle during the pandemic in that, like, because I can't connect in person with my social life or with my personal life, and because it's all online, it's essentially that I'm staring at a screen for 12 or 15 hours a day. And that is the only way that I can connect with people. And so for folks in the open source community or in the remote, in technology, really, we are experiencing a shift in the way that we're able to unwind. And I've been finding that really hard, to the point that, like, I don't actually even want to meet people on Zoom socially because I'm on Zoom all day anyway. And so I think there's room for us as a community to try to figure out how can we actually have that social break without repeating the things that we do, professionally. And that's been really tricky for me.
Yes, I agree with you. And that makes me think, I actually want to skip to Allison for a minute. And Allison, you wrote a section in the book around leading and managing. And so I'd like if you could share with us a little bit about that section. But also my question is kind of like, you talked about inviting people into your home, whether you knew you were going to invite them to it or not. The minute you're on a screen, it's like, hey, it adds a totally different element, because I think a lot of us, rely on our professional self to have a certain exterior that people see. And this like adds a totally different human element to invite people into any space in your home. And it almost feels, I know in the beginning, it felt kind of intrusive for people and we didn't know what to do. And, people not having a set workspace and things. And so what have you seen in how the teams that you work with, what are some of the challenges and things people should be aware of?
Yeah, I'm in an interesting situation in that my team is globally distributed anyway. So even before the pandemic, I have associates all over the globe: Australia, Czech Republic, Germany. I have one with me here in North Carolina in the United States. So we've already had to establish communication norms that keep us connected regardless. And I was glad that we were able to rely on those and share what we had already learned with people who are trying to adjust to this new way of working. I mean, as I wrote about in the book, it's typical leadership managing skills that you pick up everywhere, right? The importance of setting up a charter with shared goals and objectives that people feel bought into, that represents their work, that they can align to, so that when they're off on their own, asked like, hey, can you help with this? They can go back and refer to, well, does it align to our team charter? And is it work that I really should be picking up? And tips about asynchronous communication and how you can keep everybody informed of what you're doing without it becoming an overload of busy work so you're not feeling like you have to report on everything that you're doing and being micromanaged. The difference is, especially with people, like I have an associate in India who also contributed a chapter to this book, which was a great experience for me, as she joined our team in, I think officially very early in 2020. So she has joined our team and never actually met any of us face to face in person. So her experience was really great to see how she has blossomed and really acclimated to this distributed workforce. But the difference is, if she was in the office, she wouldn't have to deal with as many problems like bandwidth, or we have a woman in the Czech Republic who was running an event, and her internet in her apartment went out, so she set up shop in her hallway and took a picture of her with her laptop in her hallway, just sitting there trying to keep the event going. So I think those types of challenges are ones that were a bit unique to our current circumstances, where you just don't have access to the infrastructure in the office. I think with the letting people into your homes, I found that at first it was kind of embarrassing. I mean, I don't personally have children, so I just have to deal with the cat interruptions. But, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry they're going crazy in the back, or I'm sorry they're yelling. And everyone's response is just, no, we just want to see them. Can you please bring them to the camera? And so now when they're joining me, I just kind of hold them up to whoever I'm talking to, like, here's the baby for today. And, it kind of releases a little stress and helps you be a more human and vulnerable leader of just like, we're all dealing with this stuff right now, and it's okay.
And let's be honest, cats are peacekeepers, right? How many of us like just follow social media channels strictly to watch cat videos, even if we want to admit it or not? So I appreciate it. I think the animals specifically have kind of helped create more human connection with the people we work with. Like, it's one of those bonding things you can have sometimes with, oh, I didn't know you had a cat. You might actually be human after all. So those kinds of things, like then when we see like an insight into that. So that's pretty cool. Laura, have you experienced some other things too?
Well, I was just reflecting on, I don't know if you remember this internet meme, but it was from 2019. There was a reporter who was working from home. I don't think it was from the pandemic, but his kids ran in, and I guess his wife or his nanny came to take the kids away, and he was very embarrassed, and it went all over the internet. And am I actually mistaken in thinking that was pre-pandemic?
It
Was pre-pandemic, yeah. And I'm just reflecting on how interesting it is that, at that time, those of us in the internet community saw that, were just like, happens to me all the time. But now that that's actually a very real experience for everybody, I think that we're having a more true conversation around what it means to come to work and bring your full self to work, and what it means to actually, I mean, we called it human at a distance because it doesn't matter if you go to work, you're still you. And we have we have a culture of thinking about how I be professional and positive. I mean, I think, there is a degree of professionalism that we can have a conversation about, but like, your kids running into the camera doesn't make you any less of a professional. I don't never did. And I think it's really interesting that we are a bit more culturally a bit more flexible now about how how we're showing up. And like Allison just said, we're more vulnerable, and I like it. I think it's good because I like to know people. I like to really connect with people. So
I've always felt it's an integral part of being open. You have to be vulnerable to be open. So, we don't think about it in context of processes in open source, but when we get again to the human side of it, and we look at those principles and, how we lead and manage and even operationalize them, there has to be the measure of vulnerability in that. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good takeaway. Ben, so you helped write the introduction for the book, and a lot of that was kind of about, why might an organization even be interested in doing distributed work? It used to be a conversation where it's like, oh, well, we can't trust people to be working from home because they won't actually get anything done. And of course, that's a whole different topic to kind of open up. But for those that are kind of like watching this now and they're thinking, why might I actually want to look at distributed teamwork or looking at it, people being more remote or global? What are some of the key things that we should be thinking about?
Well, I think Allison's point about, the fact that she's been doing it already because her team is globally distributed, like that's really the crux of it. One of the things we talked about as we were planning this book is like, this is not just a open org guide to navigating the pandemic. It's a thing that organizations have been doing for years. And we want to help them be more intentional about it, right? Because a lot of times if things develop organically, they're not well thought out, and they maybe not be the best approach. But I several years ago worked at a large Northwest tech company with a sprawling campus that was basically a city unto itself. And even though most of the people actually worked from their office on that campus, everyone was distributed. If you had a meeting with somebody in another building, the chances are really good you were going to be joining it at your desk or at in a conference room, even though they're a 15-20 minute walk away. And so, this is not really about new things so much as taking what's already happening and being intentional about it and thinking through, how your organization supports what you're already doing.
Yeah, and I think that we have best practices for some of this. I mean, the open source community and people who have been working this way for a long way, we've already failed. We've already made mistakes. We've already had conflicts. And, for the hundreds of thousands, millions of organizations that are going online now and being forced into digital transformation, people in the open source community, Open Org ambassadors, of course, we can help make sure that, you don't have to make the same mistakes that we were making in the early days of the internet, because we've been there. And so we really have, some good resources to share. I
And I
think
think
that's what the book is about. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
I think the point about it being forced is really important, right? Because we've had the benefit of developing this experience over years, basically, with plenty of fallback plans, like, oh, well, I guess we should try this other thing instead. Let's try that next week. For the past year, it was very much like, you found out on Friday you're not coming back to the office on Monday, and you don't know when you'll be back. And a year later, a lot of people are still not sure when their offices will reopen. And so, I know people where they didn't even have the ability to take a computer home because they only had a desktop at work, because their job didn't require them to be mobile. Generally, they stayed in their office and did their office things. Could they take those home? Did they have to use their own laptop? Did they have anything at all that they could use? And did it have the right performance? And so you're trying to, figure all these things out all at once. And also you don't have people together in the same room to collaborate on quick fixes. So it just becomes extra challenging in that way.
That's actually something I have not given thought to this last year. Because I think that I feel a little dumb that that's just now occurring to me. Thanks for bringing that up. Well, I think it's like I've always had to. I've been independent for about 11 years now, so I've always had to have my own equipment, for myself. Like nobody else provides that, and so that's not something that even came into my sphere of thinking of. Ooh, what about the people that don't even have a laptop in their work? Because that also seems like a funny thing to me. Like, why wouldn't we have that? But that's a great thing to point out. Last question for you guys, or maybe just comments, is to kind of let everybody know. So we've been working together for, 5-ish years now at this point, give or take either side of the window there, as part of the Open Org community, and as ambassadors. And I thought maybe it might be nice to kind of highlight the things we've done or enjoyed the most, because we've been distributed the whole time. We're kind of all spread out across the United States and across the globe at large. And we've managed to do a lot of really interesting work together over the years. Out of the 12 to 15 people that kind of make up the ambassador group, and then the community obviously is much larger than that. But maybe to kind of showcase that you can have distributed groups of people. We can be human together. It does work, and we can actually produce with intention. And so maybe that might be an interesting thing to share if you guys have any little last thoughts on that.
I know I do. I wrote the preface for the book, and the chapter that I included was how to run a community call, which is something that we do in this community as well. And my favorite day of the month is when I get to see you guys and in that call. I like to be with other open experts and, talk about the work that we're doing. I haven't been able to make it this year because I keep falling on Tuesdays or Thursdays, or in the last couple of months. But I think that, having a space that's recurring, to talk about openly about whatever is going on in your community or in your organization without it being only hyper focused on work. We also have work groups and work calls and things that are, a project call. But we have a space that's just feels more social. And I think that that's really important for any community. And it's the thing that I like most about all of the communities that I'm involved in, that social space, because that's where the humans, really take the forefront. So.
I really don't want to say my favorite part is meeting face to face, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of this group. So I'm going to say, what I've appreciated is my ability to participate has shifted over the years. And I've seen that the core group of really super active contributors who are leading this community have changed over the years. And so what I think I appreciate the most is the flexibility and the openness to meet people where they are and leverage people's strengths and ability to contribute as they can. Because I don't really feel like I'm an outsider because now I can attend meetings a little less frequently, or I'm not able to contribute as much as I'd like, because the community does such a great job of note taking and sharing information and giving me multiple places to catch up and plug in and to raise my hand when I'm able to. And that's what I appreciate the most, I think.
Can I steal that answer?
I was going to say, that's really good.
Yeah.
I feel that too.
Yeah, me too. And especially this year, because at the end of last year, I was, we were writing this book and I was really contributing a lot. And this year I've just had work conflicts and haven't been able to contribute as much. And I don't feel ostracized for that. And that is heartwarming. Sorry, Ben, your turn. I just wanted to give Allison props on a great answer.
So I think mine maybe builds on the other answers, because my favorite thing is, because we have that geographic and professional background diversity, like everybody's coming in with these wildly different perspectives, and I always come away from our conversations feeling like I have just learned so much just from seeing the different points of view that people have. And because we all agree on the principles, but sort of the way that we think about those principles and apply them in our work lives and in our personal lives, and the way we think about how to present those to the broader community, it's like everybody else is thinking of these things that I never would have thought of, and they're brilliant ideas, and we really make each other better.
Are you saying that I'm brilliant, Ben? Is that what I heard?
That is exactly what I said,
okay.
Jen.
That'll be my takeaway. Thanks. Now, I actually agree with all of you, and Ben, I think you said it really well. Like I do feel like my work has changed. I've become better. My thought processes have become better working in the community, and even though it's been very rare that we actually get to meet up face to face in the last 5 years. And so I think it's interesting. It's like Laura said, it's the favorite day of the month is when you get to go and go, okay, what goofy thing is going to happen today? But then we also kind of, explore, the things overheard. Well, used to be the things overheard in the airport was one of my favorite tweets that you would throw out there on the daily. But it's the diversity of it, right? Like to be able to see everybody has their own kind of container they fit in terms of like who they serve. And so their perspective is very different than say what mine might be, or, but what can I learn from that? And culturally, the differences that we have, I had to learn that, our fellow ambassador, Jimmy, actually that dry sense of humor that he brings from the Nordic region I love it, but it took me forever to crack that little code that he had, right? So I like, again, I think that's the beauty of maybe being human at a distance, is being able to bring all of those parts of ourselves in and share them with each other. Has been great. So So we are going to wrap it up there. I do want to thank our ambassadors that have joined us today for taking the time to share more with all of us about the new guidebook. All of you that are joining us today in whatever your now moment is. And remember that you can find a link to download this book. It'll be down in the description and you can get your copy there, as well as other books and resources that the Open Org community has produced over the last number of years. And you can also sign up to join us and be part of our community on Discourse if you would like. So thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.